Today's guest is Kathleen Hyde from Merakey. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hi, thanks, Tim.
Could you give us a little idea of what your company is, what you do with your company, and the resources that y'all offer to Livingston Parish?
Sure. So I am here with Merakey, and we are a nonprofit. We provide mental health and substance use treatment to individuals in several states, but we have a pretty large presence in Louisiana, and as of earlier this year, we now have a presence here in Livingston Parish. So we opened an office at 20140 Iowa Street in Livingston, pretty close to the library, with services available to parish residents at no charge for treatment of opioid use disorder, other substance use disorders, and co-occurring mental health conditions. So that's medication management, evaluation, medication-assisted treatment like Suboxone, Sublocade, buprenorphine products, and counseling as well.
So give us a couple of definitions about the Suboxone and the other things that you mentioned, because those people that are listening may not understand exactly what that is and what it does.
Sure. So Suboxone and Sublocade, the actual name of the medication that those drugs contain is buprenorphine, and that's an evidence-based medication that is used to treat opioid use disorder. What it does is it fills the brain's opioid receptors so that if the individual does use opioids, they're not getting as much of a high, but it also prevents them from going into withdrawal if they do have a history of using opioids. A lot of people, they may get hooked on opioids if they've had a surgery and they got pain pills, or maybe they jumped to using street drugs like heroin, fentanyl. So what we want to do is, instead of just having to kind of cold turkey and not have any access to other supports, we can provide medication now that replaces that substance without causing a high, fills those receptors, prevents that withdrawal so that people can get into recovery and go about living their normal lives.
And what's the name of that again?
So the medications are Suboxone, that's an oral medication. There's an injection, Sublocade, and the active ingredient in that is called buprenorphine.
And both of them do the same thing, they're just different ways to
yes, they do the same thing. It's the same medication. It's just the delivery method is different. One you take several times a day under the tongue, and one can be done by injection once a month.
So my question to you would be this: the opioid receptors, whenever they take the opioids, obviously they attach to the opioid receptors. When you talk about stuff like Narcan will also do something. I know it's temporary, and yours is probably a little more longer lasting, but the Narcan stops the overdose, and it eventually can wear off, and then the opioids can reattach. So in a situation with the medication that you offer, what stops, is yours just longer lasting, long term? What stops the opioid receptors from, I guess from an elementary standpoint, it only allows a certain amount of the opioids in? Is that what it does?
Right. So the medications have gone in and filled the receptor in the brain. Like if you think this is the receptor and the opioid is over top of it and filled the receptor, what the medication does is it goes ahead and fills that receptor so that if they do go and use an opioid, the receptor's full. They're not going to get the high from it, or they're going to get less of a high because the medication is already in their system and blocked the drug from absorbing into the receptor.
So that particular drug sounds good, and I know some people might say all you're doing is allowing them to take drugs without having the issue, but if they're not getting high, they're not going to do it. And here's what I want people to understand. We talk to a lot of inmates, and she's been there whenever we talk to the inmates, and some of the information we get from them is really alarming, because we have a lot of people that take Narcan, and typically in every class that we put on, just on average, 7 or 8 out of 10 have been Narcaned, and 7 or 8 out of 10 are there on drug-specific or drug-related charges. But the one alarming thing that I hear is that they're chasing a high, and the people that have told me that they've died and had to be Narcaned, is really alarming to me that the other people in the class say that that's the drug that they want, right? So if you're giving them this drug, they're not ever getting that high. So they have no reason to chase that high because they're not going to achieve it, right?
Correct. Yeah. The thing with opioids is that it's high risk, but it's high reward. It's high risk because what they take could kill them, but also they get a pretty intense high from it. So if we've gone in and filled those receptors in the brain with the medication, they're not going to get that same level of high. And it also addresses the cravings that they have. So if a person's going into withdrawal or uses opioids regularly, they're getting cravings.
Right.
You know, when it's time for the next hit, they have a craving. They want the medication or they want the drug. You give them the medication and the cravings are less intense. So they're not going out there engaging in risky behaviors to get the medication because the cravings are so unmanageable.
Okay, man, that sounds like a great drug. And funding, are y'all funded through the parish or y'all funded through other organizations? Can you kind of give us an idea? Because you said everything that y'all offer is free to the parish. Can you give us an idea of where the funding comes from?
Sure. So we entered into agreement with the parish council and parish president Randy DeLatte's office to use opioid settlement dollars. So way back in the day when opioids first hit the market, they were marketed pretty heavily by the drug manufacturers. And those drug manufacturers really marketed those medications saying, you know, there is no addictive potential here. It's going to treat pain, but the person is not going to be addicted. You know, 20, 30 years down the line, we see that's not the case. So these manufacturers really like filled the streets with all of these medications that got people hooked on the opioids. So many states, I forget how many, went and sued those manufacturers and basically all banded together and they entered into settlements with the manufacturers. Right. And what those settlements do is they put money into the communities to address the problems that their reckless marketing of the medications caused. And so what we have done is we've gotten into an agreement with the parish government to use some of those funds to establish treatment. So these opioid settlement funds have very specific uses. 80% goes to parish government, 20% goes to parish sheriffs for various enforcement activities, but they have very specific uses for what the funds can be used for, and that's prevention and treatment. So we were able to identify, we've got a lot of prevention, we've got a lot of education, we're doing a lot with schools and various law enforcement agencies, but let's get treatment in the parish.
And what she's talking about funding-wise and the specific ways that we can utilize this money. When I had a podcast with Parish President Randy DeLatte, we talked about that. He went over some things, and just to reiterate to you, this is not a grant and it's not anything taxpayer funded. This is an opioid settlement. Over $50 billion was sent to every state who sent it to the local parishes, and everybody got a different amount based on how the opioid epidemic actually affected their parish or their county, you know, whatever. Some states have counties, some states have parishes. So it's important that y'all understand that these resources are funds from a settlement, not any of our money being used, because I'm a local resident here too. I live in Walker, so it's none of our money being used as a resource. So kudos to you for entering into this agreement because it's substantial. And when I teach at the parish prison specifically, we get asked for a lot of options, and we brought you into the classroom to give some instruction and some insight on this also. So tell us a little bit about some other things besides the shot that you offer.
So we have counseling services available, and we can assist with linkage to other resources. So a lot of the times we see people come out of jail. They don't have any financial resources. Their Medicaid may have been cut off. We can assist with getting them connected, like with case management, to get Medicaid reactivated so that Medicaid will pay for the medications. But also other services, like maybe they need transportation. We provide transportation for all appointments and for related appointments. Maybe they haven't had a medical examination, and maybe they've used drugs intravenously, so now they have hepatitis C or they may have HIV and they need treatment. So we can assist with transportation to various medical providers to get that treatment. The case management piece, the applying for Medicaid. Maybe they need help with applications for food stamps or other food resources, accessing other food resources. A lot of churches run, like food pantries and things like that. So we help access those resources as well. There's a lot of education and employment opportunities. So we are working with some employers who we know will hire people with criminal justice backgrounds, so that we're able to say, hey, have you considered looking at this employer? Even with your background, it may be something that they'd be willing to hire you. And just helping them to develop educational skills as well, maybe accessing courses through libraries or some of the community colleges. So we really try to provide a variety of services, not just the medication, but also the counseling to address, what was it that brought you to the substances to begin with? What can we do for relapse prevention? And what other resources does this person need to meet their needs?
My question to you is this: all the things that y'all offer, how do we, as citizens of this parish, make sure that the money is being utilized in an appropriate way, and that people aren't just using y'all as a resource to go to the store or go to the doctor or get something free? Do y'all have any safeguards in place that say, hey, this is what you have to do and this is your responsibility?
So we do screenings. Anytime someone contacts us, we're screening for what are your needs, what kind of services are you looking for, and they come in and they do an intake. So they meet with either me or another one of the licensed mental health professionals to do a full assessment, and that determines, what are their needs from a substance use standpoint, a mental health standpoint, and additional resources. And then from there, we can help to navigate what access to other resources they may need.
Okay, so basically they have to have a level of commitment. It's just not a phone call and, hey, here's everything you need in life. It's good. We want to get everybody help, so don't misunderstand the questioning behind it. But people want to know that there's safeguards in place, and people want to know that these funds are being utilized good. And when you have people, organizations like you that provide these services, it's good that y'all go through the screening process and make sure that everything's above board. In regards to rides to doctors and stuff, is everything that you're talking about opioid based, or can it be anything else?
So it needs to be services that are going to assist a person with their recovery. So we look at the person as a whole person, not just as their substance use disorder or whatever consequences they've had from their substance use disorder. Part of supporting their recovery may mean they need to be able to treat their physical health conditions as well. So that's how we look at it, as this is something that supports your recovery overall, addresses you as the whole person, so that we can help you meet all of your needs.
So you're trying to make them whole again, not just fix one problem. You're trying to make them whole, functioning member of society, somebody that can help provide a good quality of life for everybody else.
Yes, we want to look at, what are the resources that you need so that you can get back on your feet, get back to work, become, who you were before you started using the substances, and to have the best, impact for yourself and to be contributing to our parish. Yeah,
it's this opioid epidemic, it's a debilitating disease, if you want to call it that. I don't know that that's the right terminology, but it's something that consumes people, and they just lose focus on just being a normal human being. They usually alienate the people around them. They usually have a stigma attached to them because they've made family members disassociate themselves from them, family, friends. The only people that they sometimes hang around are other addicts, because addicts, for some reason, they kind of mingle together. I guess it's because it's kind of the street hustle. It's a way for them to be able to manage, because they have to be doing illicit things in order to get the quantity of drugs. And I'll tell you this, I don't know if you were there for this particular one, but we had one guy at the prison who told us that he was doing between 80 and 120 pills a day.
Wow.
And the level of exposure he has to overdose is incredible, because he said most of his pills he knew contained fentanyl. And we've talked about the DEA, 5 out of every 10 pills that are seized and tested have a lethal dose of fentanyl. So just imagine, out of just say 100 pills, right, 50 of them contain a lethal dose on average. So he's putting himself in jeopardy. But people that are in that environment, they need a way out. I tell them everybody has a sad story. Don't let it define you. And the people that you're trying to help and that the parish is trying to help, with this one pill can kill. We have awareness and prevention curriculum that we put together, but the people that we're trying to help sometimes need these resources. So I commend you and your company for coming in and bringing these resources. Is there anything that may benefit family members of people that are recovering? Because a lot of times the burden is put on the family members to try and get them from point A to point B, or to help them, give them a place to stay, even though they don't really want to give them a place to stay sometimes because they've stolen from them or they've created tension in the household. So can you give me an idea of if my son or my daughter is on opioids and they're trying to get better, I'm having a burden or the responsibility of raising them even though they're adults. What can you offer me and as help in your program?
I think you bring a really good point that we need to really examine what impact addiction has on families, because it doesn't just impact the person who may be using, it impacts the whole family, parents, grandparents, children, nieces, nephews. I would say for families, holding boundaries is a really good suggestion. If they know that it's not going to be a safe situation to bring that person into the home, families do have to hold boundaries and have accountability for their loved ones. But there's also resources out there for families. We can do family counseling, where we bring in the individual and the family to, really kind of lay out on the table what everybody's struggling with, how to move forward. Some of the resources that are out there for families are programs like Al-Anon and Narc-Anon. Those are similar to your like AA, NA meetings, but they focus on families and loved ones who have loved ones who are experiencing addiction, and it's just a supportive way for families to get some support.
So my question to you is this: when should someone seek treatment? At what point is that something that they need to? Is there a better time than not? I mean, do you need them whenever they're in jail? Do you need them when they're at the deepest depths, or whenever they're kind of coming to the reality that life isn't going to work? So is there a specific time that's better for y'all?
There's no wrong time. I'm willing to help anybody who says, this may be a problem. I'm not sure if it's a problem. Can you help me figure out if it's a problem? The assessment will tell us that. You bring up a really good point, like when someone may be coming out of jail, because that is the highest risk time in a person's life when they have not had the substances for a while. They may think that they can go back out and use the same level that they were using before. They're at a really high risk of relapse. So I would love to get them as soon as coming out of jail, maybe even pre-release if possible. Any kind of like reentry type steps we're happy to be a part of with that. But really, anytime the person feels this may be a problem.
Yeah, and what you talk about, we talk about in our opioid awareness and prevention program when we're at the prisons, the high schools, and also the churches, and wherever we are, and also businesses within our parish. But specifically, we tell the inmates the level of use that you had prior to you coming to jail, because you probably, unless you just there overnight, you probably are in the process or have detoxed. And what we find is a lot of people go back out, and I use the analogy, if you work out and you can lift 100 pounds on bench press, right, and you don't work out for 7 or 8 years or 7 or 8 months, and you go back and that's the most you can lift, you're not going to be able to lift the same thing. So we have to tell these inmates to make sure that they understand, because a lot of people overdose, because if they were taking, like the guy that was taking 80 to 120 pills, if he comes out and takes 80 pills, he's probably going to die.
Right.
So if you're listening to this, if you have a family member that's involved in opioids and they go to jail or they go to detox or whatever the case may be, make sure that somebody's bringing some awareness to them that the next time you take drugs, you cannot take the same amount. We're not condoning, as my son Tyler says, we're not condoning y'all doing drugs, but we're telling you, if you're going to do them, please don't do the same level of drugs that you did, because it's a situation where you're probably going to overdose. Would you agree with that assessment?
Definitely. As soon as you started talking about that, I was thinking about the guy who takes the 80 to 120 pills a day. If he gets, 2-3 weeks in jail and then tries to go back out and use that same amount, that could just really be disastrous. Yeah. But I think that gives us a really good opportunity to talk about what Narcan is and why it's so helpful. So Narcan is a nasal spray, and if you see someone who looks like they're overdosing, some of the signs may be, their lips or nails are turning blue or purple, their skin is clammy, they're not breathing, or their breathing is slowed or just off. Maybe they're making like gurgling and choking sounds. Even if the person doesn't have a history of opioid use, maybe it's other substance use, or maybe they don't have any history of substance use. If you have Narcan, it's one of those better safe than sorry kind of things, because you don't hurt anybody by giving them Narcan. But what it does is it gives you time. So you spray it into their nose. You still need to call 911. You still need to get them to a hospital. But what it does is it reverses the overdose so that the person can live. Most of the time, they're not going to be very happy when they wake up from the Narcan. They may, be a little bit combative or tense, but it gives them an opportunity to stay alive. They still need treatment, and sometimes you may have to give more than one dose of Narcan. I think it's a medication everybody should carry. I keep some in my purse. It's available here at the health department in Livingston. There's other access points in the parish that it is available. It's also available over the counter at the pharmacy. It's just a wonderful medication.
Yep, and I agree with her. So the parish health unit in Livingston Parish will give it to you free. You don't have to tell them who you are. You just go in there and get it. If you do get it from a pharmacy, there's going to be some financial burden placed on you. They don't give it away there. But I will say this, whenever we talk to the inmates, there's a whole lot of rumors that go around. And the first rumor that we heard from the inmates is that you can only do it 3 times. We've had people that have been Narcaned 7, 8, 10 times. So it's something that can happen as far as whenever somebody's overdosing. It's something that can happen where you need multiple doses, because from an elementary standpoint, like I said, the opioids, the Narcan comes in and replaces the opioids in the receptors. But as it dissipates, the opioids can re-engage, and that can cause problems. So if you need to give multiple doses, by all means do it. But she made a good point. Call 911 whenever you do it, whether you're with a friend or whether you just see a random citizen overdosing. It's not going to kill them if they're not overdosing. So it's safe to give it to somebody that you think is overdosing. And when I mentioned in the previous podcast that I was in law enforcement for 32 years, and the first time I experienced Narcan, I had never heard of it. And I was on a call, and there was somebody that I thought was dead. They were on the stretcher, and EMS in Baton Rouge, that's the Emergency Medical Services, they gave this person the Narcan. I didn't know what it was. I'd never seen it. I wasn't really paying that much attention to it. But all of a sudden, this person jumped up off the stretcher, became combative, and started to run. And we had to actually subdue him. And I was like, oh, wow, man, I'd never seen anything like that. So it's an amazing drug. And something else I want to touch on, because if you do give it to somebody, just say that you and a friend are doing drugs together. There's something called the Good Samaritan law, and what you need to know is this. If you give somebody Narcan, you call 911 and the police show up, the Good Samaritan law, there's some outliers on it, but it basically protects you from getting in trouble. Now, I tell people, if you have a warrant or if you have a lot of other stuff that is in plain sight, if you have 10 pounds of weed or 10 kilos of cocaine, you're probably going to go to jail. But the act that y'all doing, and I don't want to get specific with the law because this is not a crash course on the law, but it does have safeguards in there. And a lot of times people say that they get arrested anyway. Well, if you look at the content of the report, they didn't get arrested for calling, and even if they were doing the drugs, they got arrested for something else on the periphery. So, it's important that if y'all hearing this, understand, call 911. The Good Samaritan law should protect you. So a lot of people, because of your affiliation with this company, you see a lot of people, and you obviously are educated in the capacity of opioids and stuff like that. So a lot of people think that these people lack willpower.
Right.
Can you give us an idea from your perspective? Because from my perspective, it's not a willpower thing. It's something that your body is just having a response, and the cravings are there. You don't necessarily want to do them, but your body is asking you for them. So can you kind of give us a little breakdown of from your perspective?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. It's not a matter of willpower. People can have all the willpower in the world. It's just such a difficult condition to overcome, and that is why we really want to bring in as many supports and resources as possible, especially with the medications. If we can reduce the craving, that's less burden on the person's willpower. They're not having to struggle all day, every day, battling. I'm going to go, should I go get some dope? Should I not go get some dope? If we can really bring in other resources that assist that person in the recovery, it's just, I don't want to say it's less work that they have to do, because recovery in general is work. People have to do a lot of work to really dig down into, why am I dependent on these substances? What is it that I need to work on? But I don't think it's a matter of willpower. I think people can have all the willpower in the universe and still be susceptible to substance use or relapse.
I saw a documentary, and it mentioned that it takes about 3 months to kind of break this cycle a little bit. And this is just paraphrasing. And they said it's about 3 years before your body actually allows yourself to kind of be independent of the physical response and the emotional response. It takes about 3 years, to kind of get that burden of addiction out of your mind. But you're always going to be an addict. And they actually use the analogy of smoking. So if you hadn't smoked for 10 years, just say you quit smoking, and it's the same concept. If you quit smoking for 10 years and you're in an environment like a bar or even outside where friends are smoking, you may have that craving, right? As opposed to somebody like me that doesn't smoke. I would not necessarily want to smoke, but it may be drawing you. So you have to be conscious of the fact that this is a lifelong situation that you're going to deal with. Don't take the smoke, because it only takes one to get you back into the level of addiction, and you'll get addicted very quickly compared to someone who's never had that addiction.
Yeah, so in the field, we really talk about people needing to change people, places, and things. So if you think about, like, when you're in active addiction, you're probably around people who are not good for your recovery, right? You're probably around other addicts. You're probably going to places where people are using, or where you're going to be able to get drugs easily. Things are the things that enable you to use the substances. That may be like needles if you use intravenously, or just other things that go along with your substance use. So when we talk about changing people, places, and things, you really have to replace those people who are not good for your recovery with people who are good for your recovery. Don't keep going back to the house where you scored drugs, even if you think you're just going to hang out. You're putting yourself at risk.
Because misery loves company, right?
Absolutely. Misery loves company. We have to change the people, places, and things to get into a recovery mindset so that the person has the best chance at succeeding in recovery.
And we say the same thing. We just say change your environment, which is exactly the same definition that you're talking about. I think that, when I think of the overall benefit of having programs like you, having programs that we do, as far as the opioid awareness and prevention program, the PowerPoint that we put on, we have an opioid director, Brent Ballard. We have myself and my son, our co-instructors, Tyler Henderson. We have Jess and Daniel, who actually do content stuff. But the parish also has Glenn Lemoyne, Randy the Lad, Mickey Morris, and a whole bunch of other people. So we have a huge core of people that help us achieve our goal. How are y'all set up in that capacity? Do y'all have different levels?
Yes. So we have licensed mental health professionals. She's a licensed professional counselor. She's providing the direct counseling, assessment. I do a lot of the evaluations as well. We have a peer support specialist. She's an individual who has lived experience. She has experience in being in recovery and in working within a recovery community. But we also work really closely, with you, Tim, like we've said, doing some of those presentations. We work closely with the parish president's office. We're also working closely with the 21st Judicial District Court here in Livingston, so we do a lot of evaluations for individuals who are under probation or who have some pending charges. And if we identify during that evaluation that they need treatment, they then enter treatment. And we're doing a lot of work like with the district attorney's office to identify people who may need some services when they do get out of jail. We also do some work with the probation and parole departments for individuals who are reentering following a longer period of incarceration who need some services. So it's really a big combined effort with multiple providers, departments, resources. Everybody's really just working as hard as possible to really tackle this issue.
So a couple more questions for you. We talking a lot about inmates in this conversation, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is open to everybody. Mm-hmm. It just so happens some of the things that, or some of the points we needed to make were based on inmates and the concept around helping them. But this is open to everybody in the parish, right, regardless?
Correct. This is open to any adults who live in the parish. All they need to do is they can contact our office. The number is 225-217-6355. They just say that they want to get treatment services in Livingston, and then we'll set up appointments, evaluations, everything from there. At this point, we're only limited to adults, so the person does have to be 18 or older. If you're a family out there looking for some services for kids, I would contact Florida Parish's Human Services Authority, and they should be able to assist with resources for individuals under 18.
Are they located in our parish at all, or just multiple jurisdictions?
Florida Parish's Human Services Authority covers multiple parishes. They do have an office in Denham Springs. It's on Florida Boulevard in Denham Springs.
Okay. Well, on behalf of Livingston Parish President Randy DeLatte, myself, and everybody involved, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. And to the people out there, don't ever think there's a stigma attached, because Jelly Roll, in one of his conversations with Congress, he said that there was a stigma attached to being an addict. If you're an addict, it's not like yesteryear. We can deal with it, but you have to deal with it. We need you to come forward. We need to make sure that you're not letting this define you for the rest of your life. We want you to be successful, and we want you to have a good life, and we want you to help us in the parish to have a good quality of life, because everybody that's an addict that are having to get drugs from illicit people, all you're doing is perpetuating a cycle of bad behavior in our parish. And if we can get you to stop, then that means the drug dealer doesn't have as many people to sell drugs to. So you're one person, and we want you to make sure that you do everything you can to be a good citizen in our parish. Do you have any closing remarks that you want to give us regarding your company and your desire to help the people of our parish out?
I just want to make the point that addiction doesn't discriminate. It hits every neighborhood. It hits every socioeconomic status, every race, every religion. Any one of us can become addicted to opioids at any point. So I really want to make the point that help is out there, treatment is available, and it really is for the betterment of our parish. I'm a parish resident as well. I live in Walker too. So I have, that buy-in into making sure that we really put the right resources in place, and that, my fellow parish residents can access treatment and services to recover.
So if you're an addict, an addict, here's what I'm telling you. All you got to do is ask for help, because we're willing to give it to you. From the parish president on down to the lowest man on the totem pole, we have people that are involved in this podcast that are helping us. We have Brian, who helps us with the podcast studio editing. We have Lori, who also helps with that in that capacity. Everybody on this team and everybody that we've brought into this team, like your company, we're here for you, and we want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. We'll give you the resources. All we need you to have is the desire to be successful. Mm-hmm. Don't let the sad story define you. We all have sad stories. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Thanks, Tim.